Okay, hi everyone, and welcome back to our series on talking with people living with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. I'm here with Vicki and Peter, and my name is Lauren. And today we're going to be talking more about relationships and dating with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. So I guess the first thing, I'm just going to open it up to ask you what your experience has been like, Vicki.
So I've been dating my husband now for over 8 years. It's going to be 9 years in January. And we just got married about 2 years ago now, I think. It's going to be 2 years in September. And I was sick before I met him, but he got the brunt of the majority of it when we just started dating. It was kind of rough when I was in my most sick, because again, he didn't quite understand what it was, and he didn't understand why I wasn't getting better, or why I had to go in the hospital and stuff like that. But he was and his parents also didn't understand very well as well. And so when he educated himself by going to the Schizophrenia Society of Alberta and taking a class about what schizophrenia is, he was a little bit more understanding about why I wasn't getting better and why I was doing things the way I was. I'm very grateful to have him in my life, because there's times where I'm pretty sure he wanted to tap out and say bye, but he didn't. He stuck by my side, and I'm very grateful for that. It's been challenging, especially now with my mood disorder being more prevalent, because he doesn't quite understand that either. It's a lot of work in progress, and he's been with me for the majority of it, the worst of it, and he has been my rock, honestly. And if I didn't have him, I don't know what I would do, because he is a big support in my life, and he deals with so much stuff that I have to also be careful, because if he's not feeling well, or if he's not, if he doesn't take care of himself, he doesn't let me know, right? And because he doesn't want me to panic or worry and stuff like that, right? So I have to make sure I'm communicating well with him about that, about what his needs are, because I think so much focus goes on to my needs, mainly because I'm sick and he doesn't have any illness of any sort, like mental illness or any sort. Mm-hmm. So it kind of shifts the whole thing. It's about me more than him, and he doesn't want to worry me about his stuff. So it's one of those kind of give and take things where I have to make sure to check in with him and see how he's doing with everything. And that's something we kind of worked on a lot when we got married, is because that communication was not as open before, because he didn't want me to worry.
It sounds like a lot of your experience has been less with the dating with the illness and more managing it or navigating a long-term relationship with the illness.
Well, yeah, because I think I was 18 is when we got together, and that was a year before I went into hospital. And so he kind of knew, we were dating for about a year before I went into my first hospital visit. He knew, but he didn't quite understand, because I was so well presenting as well, because I didn't typically look like what you think schizophrenia is, right? I was very high functioning. I hate to say that word, but high functioning, and I was normal. So he didn't understand exactly how I could be so sick, mm-hmm. but yet function so well. And it's hard to describe how I think he was kind of taken aback at first too, because he was just oh, I didn't know you had that. But he was still quite understanding about it and very caring about it. Mm-hmm. He's a caring soul for sure. He's put up with a lot of my troubles and emotional self, and it's been a roller coaster, but he's done very well. Kudos to him. He's got heart of gold, mm-hmm. basically.
Peter, you want to talk about your experiences with dating or relationships?
Yeah, with relationships, I was married for 21 years. I was dating my wife before I got diagnosed. So I was a fairly bubbly person. I was making good money, and I too presented really well and just hid stuff. And but then shortly after we got married, I started to experience really strong psychoses, and she stood with me. She stood by me and with me and behind me for all those 21 years. The problem was at the end, it was like, oh, when's the next time? And this is what it was with my children. Like, when's the next time Peter's going to be hospitalized and the recovery? And I have no ill will against her. It's just as the marriage went along and I got more and more burned out, I guess, it strained the marriage. And in fact, her and I have had a talk in the past year where it was like the past 2 years of the marriage, the last 2 years of the marriage, I was physically there, but not mentally, emotionally. And that's just the way the illness goes sometimes. So hopefully that doesn't happen in your situation or your situation. It's something that people I know that date with schizophrenia or schizoaffective is just long term. The illness can wear a person down.
Yeah,
and it's more the negative, what's known as the negative symptoms, or the symptoms that take away from a person. As far as dating goes, because of the affective side of schizoaffective, I feel pain more than the average person. So when I've gone on dates and things haven't worked out in the end, where it's like, well, we're just gonna be friends, or thank you very much, but I'm not ready, then there's this stabbing pain that it's just like, oh, it's like, it's as bad as when my marriage ended, where it's just like, oh, I can't believe it's over. And that's being very dramatic, but that's how I felt. And I have asked women out, and obviously, and they've said no, and women have asked me out. And as far as that's concerned, I don't consider myself ready yet to be dating, although I do try. But again, for me, the affective side it's difficult to feel that pain too much. So when I try and initiate a relationship and then it falls apart, then I just sort of withdraw and isolate until I'm ready to go back out again.
Mm-hmm. For me, I was in a 7.5-year relationship when I went through the period of diagnosis and when I went through the periods when my symptoms were first coming about. And like a lot of what you said resonated, or what you said as well about like the negative symptoms taking a toll on the relationship, and about the dynamic being kind of like a caregiver dynamic. Mm-hmm. And I think that was part of the demise of the relationship. So that's something that I'm a lot more cognizant of now with my relationship right now, is just kind of making sure we don't fall into that caregiver dynamic. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, dating with schizophrenia was just like, it's not so much that schizophrenia made dating difficult, it was more that how I perceived living with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder in terms of what it said about me or whatnot, like the stigma around it, I guess, was the issue. And so I was so like paralyzed with fear in terms of telling people I was dating that I lived with schizoaffective disorder. Like I was paralyzed with fear that they would think less of me, that they wouldn't want to be with me, that they would freak out in some way, you know?
Yeah.
But I kind of came to realize that I don't want to be with someone who's going to freak out about that, right? So it kind of came to a point where I was like, I'm just going to tell them as soon as I feel that level of comfort with them, and how they react is kind of crucial to if I want to be with them or not. So my relationship with my partner now, I told him about 3 weeks in, and I was met with a lot of acceptance and love and patience and compassion, and I think that was really, really great. So yeah, dating with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, it's really hard to get over that stigma that you have placed on yourself. But I think once you do, there's a lot of room for growth, and connection.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely a growing period between us, and like just figuring out how he can help me and how I can help him understand more, and kind of like how to deal with this illness with us together, and like how to I still have trouble with this, where I think it's me against the world kind of thing, but now like with my husband, he constantly tells me it's not just you against the world, it's us against your illness, right? So you can lean on me, and trust is hard with this illness, I think, because I think that I get paranoid easily, and I think that that everyone's against me and all that stuff. But reality is that he keeps me in check and that kind of thing, and I have to accept his help when I need it, right?
And learning how to communicate about your illness is like a really big part of dating and relationships, right? And learning how to communicate about your illness and how to like effectively communicate what you need from your partner, and that sort of stuff is really crucial, I think, when you're living with schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia.
And that's something about disclosing. I try and disclose as early into relationship with anybody, not necessarily even dating, that I have the illness, just for one, to judge their reaction.
Exactly.
But also so that if something spontaneously negative happens, like where I'm suddenly hospitalized or something, then they'll know.
Blue. Yeah.
It's not like, what?
It's like not a blindside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say also with dating, even though I feel the hurt and everything, what I find is each time I'm going out and being vulnerable with women, that it gets easier. It's just and I do recognize now that when a relationship doesn't work out at all, the extra pain I feel is the affective side of schizoaffective. It's not like I'm a cream puff or I'm being dramatic. It's just the illness expressing itself.
So we kind of touched on this, but any other concerns or fears that you have around relationships or dating?
I fear that I'm going to be too much one day and then he's going to leave. And I know that it's generally just me thinking that because he's told me over and over again. And I don't know why I don't believe him, mainly because I feel like I still have that self-stigma. But he's not leaving. He's not going to suddenly leave me or anything like that. At least that's what he says. And I truly want to believe him, but I know that little voice in my head just says, maybe one day you're going to be too much and then he's going to be gone, kind of thing, right? And that's a scary thing that I deal with. But, counseling helps, and like communication is big. Like I always write down my thoughts in a journal. We have a check-in day, which is Sunday usually. Then we tell each other our feelings, like what we're feeling for that week, and like some days I'll write in my journal and just hand it to him because it's just the easiest way for me to get my feelings out there. And he'll tell me like, oh, this is what I think about it, and like how can we work on this together. But I still have that feeling that one day there's gonna be a straw that breaks the camel, and I know it's not true. I know it's not true, but it's still in my mind. It's somewhere in there.
I like that about writing it down and then having a day to share. That's a really good idea. But I get what you're saying about like I worry sometimes, and I'm afraid of sharing too much, like of sharing something that's going to turn my partner away, and he's going to be like, oh, that's too much for me, or that's too weird, that's too, and it's a fear that you have to kind of deal with and navigate. But I mean, my partner is really great at just kind of reassuring me that he's there for me. He understands what I'm going through. He wants to understand what I'm going through. He wants me to share with him and whatnot. So the communication I think is really important.
Yeah, and for me, going back to the last 2 years of my marriage, my wife at the time would say like, how are things between us? And I would just go, okay. And she'd say, what does okay mean? Because I was unable, at that time I was blunted, going back to the neutral or flat effect. I couldn't express it, how I was feeling, and that's where I got really cut off from her and also my children, her and I children. And then the other thing, as far as straw that breaks the camel's back, I ended up not being able to express my needs or my psychoses, that the social workers and the police had to come and remove me from my wife and children. And so then at that point, there was a bit of discussion, and overall it was just, obviously I couldn't handle that. But certainly communication, yes, always essential. And then another thing that I have to say to both of you is talk to your partners about what to do when things go wrong, or when or if, I should say, if you end up sort of isolating, or when they ask questions, you just go like, okay, like it's something to prepare ahead for.
That's really good advice. Yeah, like with my partner and I, we've talked about like contingency plans for when things go wrong or when things go a little bit more negative, but we haven't really ironed out the details of it enough. So yeah, that's really a good thing. Thank you for the tip.
You're
It's really a
welcome.
good thing
Yeah.
to kind of consider.
The weekly check-in is very important right now because it kind of, and it's important for me to know what's going on in his head as well because if it's just one-sided, then it's not really working, I guess, because you're supposed to be communicating between two of us, like so for him to me and me to him. So I think it's important that he tells me what he's feeling and stuff like that as well. It's very important to get both sides, not just focusing on one, right?
I know I can get in my head about like what he's thinking and be
Yeah.
like, get a little paranoid, I guess,
Yeah,
about
of
like,
course.
oh, he's thinking that this is too much. Oh, he's thinking I'm crazy for this or that, or he's thinking he doesn't like me anymore because I did this or because
Yeah.
I'm experiencing this or that. So yeah, having that two-way communication, also just to be a supportive partner yourself and
Yeah,
not
exactly.
creating that caregiver
Yeah,
dynamic.
the caregiver dynamic.
They're
I
going
think,
through the same thing you are, just in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're experiencing, yeah.
I think at the beginning of my illness when I was really sick, I think we did have more of that caregiver mentality, and I think that's where a lot of that problem started from, and that uncertainty about our future together. But once I got more well and we started to communicate more, we're actually now partners instead of just caregiver versus caretaker dynamic kind of thing, right? So he doesn't have to worry as much about me anymore, and I'm now contributing more to the relationship than I was before, and that's important too, I think.
And I think it's important to kind of note that sometimes it probably is going to slip back into like a caregiver and caretaker role, and that's okay. But like to know how to get out of that again and to be partners again, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And with any part of the illness, if it becomes chronic, then any symptoms or any lifestyle becomes chronic that's unhealthy, then discuss it and work it out. And before it slips, because there would be years in that 21-year marriage where there was caregiver-client kind of relationship with my wife at the time being the caregiver and me just kind of coping along.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So is there any other comments that you have on relationships or dating that you wanted to share?
I wanted to say that what you two really touched on, the communication, that's always important
Yeah.
in any relationship, but especially with having
Especially,
mental health concerns.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences
welcome.
and your thoughts on relationships and dating. It was really helpful to get your perspectives. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks again for watching and have a great day. Bye.